Hi, Jada.
Hey, good evening, Lin.
And hi to those who are tuning in and joining us for tonight's episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. We're not tumbling tonight, though, Jada. We're flowing.
Oh, I like that idea. Okay, let's flow.
Is that the topic for today?
Okay, really setting this up straight away. All right, so yes, the topic for today is on flow. This is the second topic that we are unpacking with regards to states of being, the different states of being that you get into to get the most out of life. So last week, if you managed to catch our episode, we were unpacking on happiness, right? What's the formula for happiness? And today, if you're watching, this is episode 15 of Down the Rabbit Hole, and we want to unpack flow, which essentially is about creating optimal experiences.
Okay, creating optimal experiences. Okay, so this is part of a 4-episode theme that we are doing for the month of December. And the theme is being states that change your life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, you're right. Being states that change your life. What was I talking about just now? Okay.
So today we're going to talk about
why are we talking about being states? Why is being state important in the first place? Why do you say being states would change a person's life?
Getting into the right being state stops us from reacting to life. So because if we are able to choose the being states from where we want to, how we want, well, from where we want to live our life from, as an internal facing, that begins to dictate our reality. So then living life becomes more conscious and deliberate, as opposed to you're hit left, right, center by trucks and trains that just come your way.
Yeah, I like what you say that, Lynn, about that internal facing, internal state, right? And if you think about it, human beings, we're all human beings, but yet we are so human doing, right? We are always constantly doing, constantly actioning, constantly in the midst of trying to get things out there. But we forget that actually we are human beings, that when we are in the being state, in the internal facing that you spoke of earlier, that's where actually you experience what life really means. And you are present to what life's happening around for you.
Yeah. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, down the rabbit hole is an inner work session for coaches and pretty much anybody who wants to join us in this journey. So inner work is another very common name for it, self-work. So that's when we're working on ourselves. And it's very important for coaches to dedicate like part of their life energies into this. So CCI is a coach training organization, right? We train coaches, but it's not just the skill sets that make the coaches, it's who we are as a person. And we bring so much of who we are, this being that we are, into our sessions, right? Which is why, of some leaders or some people who walk into the room and they don't even have to do anything, but just by how they're being, it changes the atmosphere for good or for worse.
It's like a presence that they bring into the space, into the room. And we're hoping that, by unpacking these 4 topics around states of being, the first, which we did last week, was on happiness, flow, and now flow. The next 2 weeks, what's the other 2 states that we are unpacking?
We have equanimity next week, and then gratitude for the last week of December, which is so apt.
Yeah, you know why I throw it to you? Because I couldn't figure out how to pronounce equanimity.
Okay, there you go.
Gratitude. Okay, so we want to unpack these states of being because, as you said, it's important for coaches to understand and to know how to step into this being state, because constantly when you're facing clients, you need to bring in this presence into the coaching space.
Nice. Okay, so Jada, let's talk a little bit about our topic today, which is flow. And flow is the being in an optimal experience, right? That's what you said earlier on. Where do we even start with that? How do we even get into an optimal experience?
Okay, so can I borrow the words of this positive psychology that really came up with the idea of flow? Okay. I don't know if anyone has read this book before. It's called Flow. We stumbled upon this book. I stumbled upon this book probably about 13 years ago, and it introduces the idea of optimal experiences. I want to try to pronounce his name, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. So he's an Hungarian psychologist. And he said, the best moments in our lives are not the passive, receptive, relaxing moments. Okay, the best moments usually occur if a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile. So the idea of being in optimal experience is somewhat a feeling of being in the zone. You hear of athletes speaks about that, right? They're in the zone and they're just performing at their best.
Yes.
And everything is just spontaneous, effortless. You're kind of like in an ecstasy state. So essentially, that's what the idea of optimal experience or flow feels like. Everything happens automatically without thinking. You're merging yourself with what's happening in the moment. Your body, your identity, your ego disappears from consciousness. So that's the idea or gist of what flow means.
You know what comes to mind?
What?
The time that I went skydiving.
I've not done that yet.
You will, right? At some point. Okay, but any kind of adrenaline extreme sport, where the experience of it is just so overwhelming that your brain has to shut up because you're so focused on, whoa, what do I need to do? You know, yeah, I feel like all my faculties as a human is utilized in that moment where I don't have time to overthink. So from the moment the plane is climbing and then your heart stops pumping and then your brain just goes psst, and then after the next thing you know, because I did tandems, I was strapped on. So okay, go into banana, and then he just jumps off and you just follow, and the next thing you know, you're like, so what happens when you first jump off is that the wind is so, because you're falling, right? So the wind, like, so I couldn't breathe. It's like being dunked into water and you cannot breathe. so your mind is just, oh my God, I can't breathe. And then after that, when you begin to settle down, oh, the scenery is beautiful. So it's so overwhelming, it shuts the mind up. So that to me is like an experience of an example of an optimal experience.
Lin, you know, when you say your mind shuts the minds down, right? Can you explain or describe a little bit how does it feel to be in that state when the mind shuts down?
Extremely at peace. You feel absolutely alive because you're just so present. You're not with anything else. You are at first only with, oh, I can't breathe. And then you are with, oh, the scenery is gorgeous. So
yeah, so what people usually describe when they are in that flow or in that zone, right? There's the sense of whether is it inner clarity, that silence or that inner peace. There's also a sense of like timelessness. You're not like checking your clock to see how many minutes has passed. You know, you don't have that. And also extreme positive feeling. So it's a lot of positivity. Some even might say adrenaline. Not a like anxious adrenaline type, but I think it's in the moment type of like flowing with things. Yeah.
And that's why these kind of flow or optimal experiences are addictive. Why people, you know, they need to keep going skiing, snowboarding, or, you know, just adrenaline sports, or painting, singing, dancing, because we rely on those moments to let ourselves go and experience life. And it's such a stark contrast to slogging in the office 9 to 5 in front of your computer, you know, taking calls, getting like SHIT thrown at you and stuff like that. And so it's such a stark contrast. So people equate that state to happiness.
Which state do you mean to
like the flow state? Like they equate that to happiness. So you often hear I feel happy when I do my painting. I feel happy when I'm just connecting to my spouse and talking. But you know, so that's yeah. So it's that contrast that we go through. So I think the question here is, how do we create our entire life as an optimal experience? Because it cannot only rely on we cannot only rely on one activity like playing piano to feel like we are living life. And then like 98% of the rest of your life just sucks. You're dragging your feet through and then you play piano and it feels so good. Like, what if we could stretch that to encompass our entire life? How can we create multiple optimal experiences in all the areas of our life?
So that means like
to relationships, to work, to health, to spirituality.
Yeah, as you're saying that, I'm asking myself, right? I mean, you're totally right in the sense that, you know, painting or art or even music often are the gateways to experiencing all this flow state. right? And then I'm asking myself in my everyday life, when was the last time I experienced flow that is not in a painting or it's not in listening to a music? Perhaps okay, if I were to ask myself, okay, in the last few months of work, whether it's it coaching or training, when have I experienced flow? Okay, as I'm thinking and reflecting on this, Lin, if you have any idea or experiences to share, okay, in when did you last experience flow at work in coaching?
Right. So before that, I want to say there are some people who are joined us live. So hi guys, thanks for joining us. If you're not shy, wave, give an emoticon, or put your name in chat so that we know that you're following us. And I'm excited to have you guys join today's conversation. We're actually already 15 minutes in, Jada. We have like another 15 to 20 minutes left. So we have to dive faster. We have to tumble faster. But yes, when I'm leading programs and when I have to juggle, so not skill set programs, those are quite structured, but the ones that require deeper healing. Yeah.
Actually, I just recalled, right? I was also going to say training, like in, I think 2 months ago, I think in one of the CCI's intensive weekend training. And I think because I've done the supervision for a while, right? So it was like one of my first few times doing the intensive training. And I mean, it's not that I've not trained people in a big room before. It's just that in that context, in CCI's context or training coaching skills as itself, in the context, it's not something that I do it constantly day in and day out, right? So I remember there was a certain amount of preparation, there was a certain amount of nervousness, but then on the day itself, because I had all those prep work done, okay, it's not that I'm not scared or I'm not nervous or I'm not or I don't feel confident. I don't feel confident. I mean, I've got a little bit of uncertainty there, but in the moment on that day itself, it's kind of like I just went in and I let loose of all those anxiety and all that. I just told myself, okay, what is the three main things that you want to deliver here as a message? Keep that at the back of your head. And whatever I'm saying, keep tying back to that. And so I remember in that experience of that whole day, there was a certain flow happening for me in that moment. And so in that sense, why I bring this up? Because I think something about flow state, right, is that in order to get that flow, that optimal experience, there has to be a balance of your skill set matching the stretch or the challenge of the experience that you're doing. So anything that is too easy to do, right, there's no challenge, you get bored. Anything that's too difficult, you give up. Right, then that state of flow kinds of like disappear. But if there's a match there, then you are able to then move into that state of flow easier.
So you're saying that the situation at hand it stretches you a little bit, right? So because you talked about the anxiety, which is something I relate to, whether it's leading, whether it's jumping off a plane, whether it's bungee jumping or anything, there's always going to be the palpitation that you feel. So it means that you are actually out of your comfort zone, but you are not so, it's not so over your head that it cripples you, that you have the relevant skill set that you feel up for the challenge. So that's where you go into this optimal state because you have what it takes, but you also need more than what you have had up until now.
Yes, exactly. So it provides that challenge that is slightly higher than our current ability and current skill set.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this is what we're talking about so far is flow is an optimal experience, right? And we all have certain activities in our lives where we experience flow. So the question is, how do we extend that across our life? So we've just established that flow of the optimal state happens when we are slightly challenged, but we have the skill sets or the confidence to match that challenge, right? So we feel that. Okay. Now let's go a little bit deeper. Consider that there are certain challenges that you would gladly enjoy there are certain things or tasks or situations where you gladly enjoy this challenge, and there are certain things which you won't. Let's say you hate your job, you hate your boss, and then your boss throws you a project that like stretches you have the skill sets, but when you enjoy it, would you enjoy it?
No,
not necessary, right? So then again, it's not every challenge that you will enjoy.
Okay.
So this is where Mihei also talked about a distinction that all of us need to be very clear about, and I love this. The first one is about ordering consciousness. So, we are constantly reacting to the data that happens around us, our external environment, right? The universe happens, life happens, and, the planet spins the way that it spins. It is indifferent to humanity. So sometimes we feel like, how come this is happening to me? Sometimes we feel like, oh, the universe is on my side. But actually, nature happens and it's indifferent to us, okay? So it is actually on us to then determine the kind of experiences that we want to have in our lives, all right? And in order to do that, there has to be an order of consciousness. Now, if we use our layman language, it is called an intention. When we set an intention, we are ordering our consciousness to place a priority on certain things. And therefore, it begins to attract, because of our focus on that particular thing that we want, it attracts us to keep looking at that, right? And so it deprioritizes other things which are therefore not within our intention. So that begins to order our, perspective of what's happening in our lives.
Okay, pause there for a moment. I just want to make sure that I'm capturing what you're saying in terms of order of consciousness, right? So if I were to take my example of leading, if my order of consciousness is focused on my lack of confidence, is focused on my anxiety, then I will become very self-conscious and I will not be able to get into that flow state. Yes. But if my order of consciousness is prioritizing delivering the key messages that I have in mind, then my focus is going to be on that.
Yes.
That's what you mean by order of consciousness.
Yes. So this is where attention comes in, and attention is psychic energy. And most people squander it, right? But you realize that when you invest in something, when you invest your attention in something, like what all of us are doing now on this session, yourselves and those who are tuning in, our attention is on ourselves and our quality of life. And so it is the mark of a mark of consciousness is the ability to focus at will. You hold it down. It's not accidental, like, oh, now I suddenly, I'm sitting on the toilet bowl, I suddenly think about myself, and now that, I finish my business, I go off, and then your thoughts change. That is not a mark of consciousness. A mark of consciousness is, even if it's a painful thought, you can hold it down. Even if it's uncomfortable, you can hold it down. In this case, if it's a stretch for you to feel, let's put aside my inner demons, let's focus on the bigger picture. And to keep pushing that for the whole day of training, that's a mark of consciousness. It is the attention, it is a psychic energy that you keep channeling into this chosen task or challenge.
Whoa, I love it.
Jada, you are... Okay, so this is one thing, right? We need to know. Sounds very good, but I tell you what the battle is most of the time. And I love this distinction from him. The battle that we are fighting every day is against entropy that brings disorder to our consciousness. So what it means that because when we are not intentional about something, we're not intentional about living, entropy happens. So entropy happens all the time. You see it when you leave a piece of banana on the kitchen counter, it would just turn brown after a few days, right? So if you leave things as they are, they're not still, they are actually disintegrating. And that's what happens to us if we are not intentional about creating who we want to be. We actually go with the flow of life, which is entropy. So it's actually pretty scary. So if we are not intentional with our thoughts, then entropy introduces disorganization and chaos. Okay, so real life example, when it's happened to me a few times, let me know if it happens to you. Sometimes you're busy thinking, you're pissed off, or your thoughts are so occupied when you're driving, and you realize that you almost get into an accident. Like, so sometimes I'm so busy thinking, I don't really check my blind spot. I was like, a couple of weeks ago, I was like, I got horned at. I almost hit a motorcyclist.
Is it like when I'm walking along the streets and sometimes I stumble at
or yes.
that hit the car?
Accidents, things that throw you off, somebody that you don't like say something and triggers you negatively. All these things are causing disorganization.
But can I say it's so common. I mean, if you look at the everyday life, right?
Mm.
I mean, these days I try to practice, like, having that morning ritual that we talked about in the previous episode on happiness.
Yeah.
I try to practice that and have that deliberate setting of intention so that I kind of have that order of consciousness that you spoke of. But along the day, it's just so easy. It's so easy to just have things come along and the whole order of consciousness just get slipped away. And then the day will become chaotic. Or if I could just, pick up my phone, and then if I happen to go into Instagram, I get sucked in, and then the whole order of consciousness just disappears.
Yeah. Which is why the battle is with entropy. It's not with ourselves. There's nothing wrong with ourselves, but it's because entropy happens, and if we don't catch ourselves with awareness, we get sucked into that, like what you just said about Instagram, which is so true.
So Lin, so then what are some of the strategies that coaches or those of you who's listening on the line, what can we begin to put in place so that we win this battle against entropy?
Okay, it's very interesting. So order in consciousness happens when energy can flow. Optimal experiences are created when there is a free flow of this order of consciousness. Okay, so what this means is, if you choose something that you want to be really good at, whether it's leading or art or coaching or whatever, because you determine that to be important to you, you set your intentions around it, the consciousness can flow there because there is an order, there is a pathway. So as long as there's that energy flow, you can create the optimal experience. Okay, which is why when we talked about expanding your life to more than just one area that gives you optimal experience, it's about, if we really look at it, it's about creating our entire life deliberately. So in the last session, we spoke about going to the bare minimum, right? We went to Walden Pond, shave, like push life into a corner, like whatever, I can't remember. But you are really finding the essentials of life. And so actually your essentials of life could be those 4 to 5 things: work, relationships, health, spirituality, maybe 4 things. And then it's about being very deliberate about these 4 things so that your energy and that psychic energy can flow into these areas. Right? It's making sense so far? So in the bottom line is, it's about how we feel about ourselves and about what happens to us, right? And in order to improve life, we must improve the quality of our experiences. So if everything is deliberate, from our relationships and exercise and then do baking at home or whatever, if everything we deliberately go after the quality and we enjoy it, these are things we enjoy and we strive to be good at it, you can pretty much say that you are achieving optimal experience. Your life is an optimal experience in itself.
And throw in that bit about giving yourself that additional challenge or that stretch, right? Because you need that. If not, it's just another of doing of an activity, right? There's got to be a challenge or a stretch there for you.
Yeah.
Is it pushing yourself to learn to connect to your loved ones in a different way, or in your spiritual practice, hold that state of zenness or that state of beingness for like 5 minutes longer, I don't know. Or your fitness, run that extra mile. And push that challenge and the skill set that we were talking about earlier.
I like that point, Jada, because it also points to how we need to be deliberate around how we want to push ourselves, right? Because like what you said, once we've done it, our skill set has matched that challenge, and we leave it there, it will go into entropy, which is why sometimes we end up doing the same thing over and over again, and then we wonder why we're doing it.
And you get bored.
Yeah. Because entropy is happening.
Yeah. So oh my God. So it means that consciousness and how deliberate and how conscious you are at every moment is so, so, so crucial. Oh my God, I'm shaking the computer, but
you are.
Yeah, my point.
Yeah. So we can wrap up with some strategies. And according to me, hey, there are 2 things that must happen simultaneously. The first one is to make your external conditions match your goal. So whatever that you're trying to work on, your goal, your external condition must, or your environment must match that. So, you know, if like in my case, like being more in tune to like spirituality and zenness and all that, then that's why I have got the flowers and the pictures and the crystals, because this environment sets me up to like plot along my goal, right?
It's like a priming, yeah.
Yeah. At the same time, we must constantly, consciously change how we experience the external conditions to make them fit our goals better.
Mm. Mm.
So I think like what you said earlier on, you know, you start off the morning very zen, you go and open Instagram or you open your inbox and then you're not so zen anymore. And then that's where the choice comes in, right? How can you change your inner experience to match your goal? If your goal is to maintain zenness, then there is hope for you. But if you don't even have that goal in the first place, you don't know what the hell you're doing, right? You just go with what hits you.
Yeah. And I guess if you keep practicing that, this is where then your ability to control your state of being comes in, right? So then the state of being is not accidental. It's not like, oh, suddenly I stumbled into happiness as a state, or I stumbled into flow as a state. But it is a deliberate stepping into that state, deliberate taking on that beingness.
Which is a wonderful way to live, don't you think? Then we're not victims of life.
I love it.
So I think what I really enjoy out of today's conversation, my takeaway is the reminder about the entropy that happens. Because I also see it happen in a lot of coaches, you know, when they're in coach training and when they're in that school environment, that condition, they are really dedicated to that self-work. They're dedicated to that transformation. But when they leave the environment, that's where maybe not immediately, but give them a few months or a year. And if they don't plug back in, or if they don't have the same quality of peers around them that matches, you know, the original environment they came from, entropy will happen. So after a while, I do see coaches suddenly sort of lose it. They lose that, or their self-awareness drops. Their commitment drops, commitment to truth, commitment to, you know, having these conversations with people. So that's what happens if we don't actively keep choosing to like the coaching path.
Something that I'm thinking about doing next would be listing down, like you said, that 3 or 4 areas to look at, and then setting maybe a small, simple goal that would be a stretch, a challenge, and then to use that as a way to experience that flow state.
I think we need to have a conversation around our 2021 goals. But you know, I think the difference, you know, understanding this, the difference then is, what is the bare essential to a very fulfilling 2021?
Very essentials.
Yeah. And it doesn't lock you in with a smart goal that drives you crazy because, oh, I'm not in progress, right? But it's broad enough for you to feel creative, for you to feel that there are many ways to manifest this intention.
And you know what would be interesting is if we were to take a look at these goals and set it as states of being instead of like an actionable goal. Right? If my goal in 2021 would be to get into the state of flow more, or to get into the state of creativity more, then I will frame what I want to do around that. Then constantly you have that being state instead of doing.
Yeah, and I can already see how if you keep to that, you would have a wonderful year, because you know your life is no longer dictated by external stuff. You are the one who's feeding your soul, which is nice. Okay, well, we spoke a lot today. It's a good conversation. So next week we're still on being states that change our life, and we're going to talk about equanimity. And in the gist, it is a state where we are. It's like a combination of zenness as well as possibilities. So it's a very big space. It's a very big space.
Wow.
So we'll talk about bigness of being. Yeah.
I need
And
to
look at how,
explore that one.
okay, let's go. And look at how, and that might change our lives.
Yeah, thank you everyone for being here with us. If you managed to join us for this live, thank you for being here. If you haven't and you just caught the replay, join us next Tuesday, 9 p.m. Facebook Live. Anything else, Lin, you want to say?
No, see you.
See you.
Bye.
Enjoy your evening. Bye.